Golic and Smetty here.
Tweet about the butt fumble until someone hires you.
Welcome to yet another edition of Golic and Smetty. I am Mike Golic Sr. She is Jessica Smetana. And Jess, this one is about you. We're going to get to college football and the NFL because we know football is king. We're going to start to hit some more baseball probably next week as the World Series will be going on with the Astros and the Phillies. How about boy, oh boy, there's some good stuff going on there. We'll get into that. I almost started into it saying we'll get into it later. But I need to talk about and find out from you. We have Grand Prix in the U.S. and now it's going to be 3 spots. We already had it in Miami. And we know it's going to be in Vegas next year. And this past weekend, it was in Austin, Texas. And you were there, like taking it all in, doing stuff, interviews and such. You were everywhere. So let's start there. We'll get into the race and Max Verstappen and the Constructors' Cup and all that's basically overs with. And it seems like every single race there's some kind of appeal or drama or somebody looking at some kind of 5-second. This time I think we got a 30-second penalty. So there's always that stuff. But how was, because I read a few things about busing people 3 hours. And so from the fans' perspective, how was this whole thing?
I gotta say, I thought it was great. I have heard the same things about traffic, but I didn't know if that was an issue this year or not. But Mike, there's 440,000 people over this span of a weekend going to this event, and you take like a 1-lane highway to get in and out of it. So that doesn't surprise me at all. But as a spectator, I thought this was, leaps and bounds over what I experienced at the Miami Grand Prix. And it was Miami's first one, and I imagine they'll make some changes, year to year to improve the experience. But this was just like a whole different level. It was so much fun. The race was incredible. It was a great race. It's a great race track. There's just a lot more speed, high-speed corners. There's more overtaking. The weather was amazing. The fans all were super nice. Like you said, I was talking to a bunch of fans the 2 days leading up to the race. And then, of course, like Austin is just a fun city. There's great restaurants and bars and shopping and food and everything. So, yeah, I had a really great time. I thought, and not to put down the Miami Grand Prix, but this really felt like a race. Like this felt like a motorsport race. People were there for the race. It was the biggest event in the city. The city was buzzing. The airport was buzzing. I really... from the moment I got on my flight and heard people talking about Max Verstappen and all this in the flight, strangers just on the plane, I knew it was going to be one of those like crazy sports weekends.
Listen, I agree about Miami. I know you live there now, but I've said this many a time. When I played in Philly and then played with the Dolphins, it was night and day about the actual passion from fans. There was so much apathy in Miami, and quite honestly, I know for that race, a lot of it is to be seen, who's who and more off the track than on the track. So it doesn't surprise me that Austin was from a race venue, and the people were into that a little more. And again, we'll get into the race. I know that Max Verstappen had the 11-second pit stop that almost cost him the race that we'll get into. But do you think, or I should say, how do you think this fares around the world? Is it possible? See, I don't know the schedule. Will next year, will we have 3 in the U.S.? Will there be one in Miami, Austin, and Vegas? So will that be the most on any continent?
I think Europe has the lion's share of races still. But yeah, it's 3 in the United States is certainly a lot considering last year for the past decade, there's only been 1, and it's been the race in Austin. And so I think Formula One is trying to capitalize on this American interest in the sport being the highest it's ever been, and the spectacle of American sports, and having this race in Miami and then the race in Las Vegas and setting them up to be like Super Bowl type spectacle events where there's luxury boxes and they're selling, experiences to fans. And it's probably just going to be a different crowd than what you get in Austin, where people are going to see the race and sit in the grandstand or sit on the hill. Like, people are, going and eating like festival food, corn dogs and hot dogs and hamburgers and all that. People aren't there looking for, caviar hot dogs or whatever they were selling at Miami. It was something like that. But yeah, and I think personally, like, it's great to have a mixture of everything as a sports fan. Like, it's good to have your street races and your Vegas races that are going to be at night, lights on. It's going to be a spectacle. But then I think it's also good to have races where the focus is on the actual drivers and the driving, which is what it was this weekend. We saw some incredible performances by Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Lando Norris. It was just a really fun race, I thought. And so I know that there are the older fans of the sport, fans that have been fans of F1 for longer, not older people. I should clarify.
Thank you.
Yeah, not you, Mike, but
thank you for all the older people out there.
People who have been fans of the sport for a while, I can probably see why they would be skeptical of adding a second and third race in the United States, and Formula One cashing in on that. But I think as long as you keep Austin on the schedule and you make, a little bit of improvements here or there to Miami and Vegas to make sure that they're actual fun races too, I think it's great. And then, of course, you're going to have people across the pond complaining about the time of the race, Mike. I heard some of the British podcasts I listened to were talking about how late they had to stay up to watch it, which is funny because, in the States we have to get up at 6 a.m., 7 a.m. usually to watch the races that are in France or the UK or Monaco. So I thought that was kind of funny and probably another reason why people complain. But overall, I think the Circuit of the Americas it's a great sports venue.
So what did you do there? I know you had some responsibilities there. I saw you around with a microphone walking around, so I know you were deeply involved in the weekend.
Yeah, I was actually there shooting like a promo commercial for Google Chrome and McLaren. So Google Chrome sponsors McLaren's car. They have Google Chrome, logo on the wheels and all that. So they asked me if I would come to Austin and host a pit stop trivia game with fans and ask fans to answer trivia questions. They had like 3 seconds to do it. And so I was doing that for the 2 days that I was there. And then I went to the race afterwards, like when we were wrapped. So I was pretty busy, had to get up early, like had to, interact with a lot of people that were fun and excited and crazy and super into the races. But overall, I thought it was a really great crowd and a great atmosphere. And my only complaint, Mike, is that I had to go on top of this. There's this like observation tower at the Circuit of the Americas, and I had to go to the top of it on the second day, and it was so windy. Oh my God, never again.
Didn't dig that, huh?
I'm not afraid of heights. I am not afraid of heights. Don't care about heights. Don't think about heights. I used to live on, the 30th floor of an apartment building for a couple of years in New York, but I went up there and the wind was like whipping my hair around, and I was like, nope, I'm going back down. I'll take the stairs.
As far as venue, though, we've already, in talking about F1, you and I, and again, me being kind of a newbie to this, noticing like the racing and you want to see good competitive races, and there's a couple of tracks, Monaco being one of them. It's never going to get moved from Monaco, but and others where you don't have the passing ability and it just doesn't seem as competitive. It seems like Austin was. It seems like you had the ability to pass, whether it be the turns or the back straightaway. I know where Red Bull really kind of went after it in this one. So from a racing venue, from the track, it seems like it shows good competitiveness.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like this track was just plopped down in the middle of, I guess, like an open field, and it was built for racing, whereas the Miami circuit is built around the Hard Rock Stadium, so there was a lot less freedom to build it a certain way. And so they had, and initially I think they were actually going to build the Miami circuit in downtown Miami, so it was going to be on actual, streets.
Right.
And they wanted to race across the bridge to Biscayne Bay or something like that, which is, I think would have been really cool, but there's a ton of logistical issues there, so it didn't work out, and it ended up being at the Hard Rock. And then, the Las Vegas race is going to be on the Strip, Mike. So it's going to be on the it's going to look incredible. But again, they're not going to be able to change too much of what the existing infrastructure is to make it a really competitive race. And you mentioned Monaco, which is interesting because Monaco actually, it remains to be seen if it will be on the calendar in 2 or 3 years. I think there are a lot of fans that don't care for it. The
players will lose the drivers will lose their minds. They love going there, don't they?
Well, most of them live there, so it's like a home race for a few of them. But I think there's a lot of fans who wouldn't be too upset to see Monaco taken off the calendar. So that remains to be seen. I think there's, again, like Formula One has to strike a balance. Next year is going to be a crazy season because it's the most races they've ever raced in a calendar year, and that puts a lot of strain on budgets, on people that have to travel from week to week, on the entire infrastructure of Formula One. So we'll see what happens 5 years from now if there are still 3 races in the U.S. I think the Miami race signed a 10-year contract. I'm not sure. I can't remember what Austin and Vegas' statuses are, but I really hope Austin stays on the calendar for a while, because that really felt the most like a race in a sporting event to me, versus Miami, which felt like a fun party.
So so again, we're going to go on the track, but do you think in the long run here, again, this is starting to become popular in the U.S. a lot, like me, took in the Drive to Survive on Netflix to kind of know the characters a little bit. And now the races that are going on in the U.S., as you mentioned, 3 going on next year. Will we Americanize this thing, or will this thing make it okay in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think there's already there was an announcement this weekend that there will be an American driver on the grid next year racing for Williams, Logan Sargent, who races in F2. He's from Fort Lauderdale, so not too far from the Miami Grand Prix. As long as he gets his super license points at the end of this year, he'll be eligible and he'll be racing on a team next year. There's been interest by certain Americans like Mario Andretti to buy a team or buy into a team or start a new team. And so there's all of those opportunities. And then, of course, there's like all the, American fans now that are infiltrating the sport, podcasting about it and talking about it and bringing it to, our more mainstream media sources like, me on this show and the Le Batard show. So ESPN actually just announced this weekend that they're extending their broadcast rights with Sky and F1 for 5 more years, commercial free. So I don't know exactly what this looks like in 5 years, because we all have such short attention spans. And if the racing drops off or we see a downturn in interest, like maybe it will level off. But I do think that there's enough seeds planted and enough people interested that as long as they keep having weekends like, last weekend in Austin, people are going to want to buy tickets and go.
And hopefully, do you think I guess in this case, ESPN will just keep it with Sky and not try and bring in their own announcers?
I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of it too much, Mike, but I do know what a freaking process it is to make that show. There was a story about it recently, I think in the New York Times, about what goes into making that show. And I can't imagine. I couldn't even film a car going by on my iPhone. Like, I couldn't even track a car with my iPhone camera. And these massive, these cameramen on these massive cameras are tracking them go around turns at like 180 miles per hour. Like, I think Sky does a great job with it. So I'm certainly excited that they're going to be doing it. There was also, Mike, I don't know if you saw the drama on the pit, in the grid walk this weekend with Martin Brundle and Brad Pitt. But apparently Brad Pitt kind of blew him off a little bit when Martin Brundle was trying to get an interview with Brad Pitt. And Brad Pitt's making a Formula One movie right now. That's another thing that the Americans are getting invested in. There's a lot of new media coming out about Formula One movies and documentaries. And Lewis Hamilton's got some Apple Plus documentary coming out. So that ticked off a lot of Formula One fans who were like, hey, Brad Pitt, if you're going to make a movie about our sport that you don't know anything about, maybe you should be nice to our legendary little Martin Brundle interviewer guy when he's trying to ask you questions at the race.
Yeah, that sounds like something we would do. You know,
Yep.
I mean, we know all there is to know. We don't need to talk to you little people involved. I mean, my God, you're right. I mean, just do the thing, you know. I mean, if you're going to try and be involved in F1, that is somewhat amazing. All right, so the race itself, Verstappen starts in the 2 slot. He ends up winning. We know he was going to be the champion, 2nd year in a row, but he helps Red Bull win the Constructors' Cup as well. That broke an 8-year streak by Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton, second in this, doesn't have a win this year. It was Verstappen's 13th, but he had to be. I can't even imagine when you're in a tight race, or I guess any part of the race, when you're used to these pit stops being about 2.5 seconds, and he was in one where I think the gun jammed, the air gun or something for changing the tire, and he was there over 11 seconds. That had to seem like forever to be sitting in an F1 pit for 11 seconds. So he gives way, obviously, to a couple of drivers, but is able to make it up. That's what I think was the cool part of this race, of him coming back and winning it after that bad pit stop.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, I'm going to be honest. I was rooting for Lewis Hamilton to win his first race of the season, and he was set up, in a almost perfectly. He was on hard tires at the end, and Max Verstappen was on medium tires, and the Red Bull's faster to begin with, and they're on faster tires. And so when Verstappen got to within like 2 or 3 seconds of Lewis Hamilton with 10 laps, I think everyone knew that was it. And Mercedes, I don't know if there was anything they could have done better. Red Bull just has a better car, but I was really hoping Lewis was going to be able to pull one out, especially in front of the American fans, because of all the drivers getting big cheers at the race, I think Lewis Hamilton, Sergio Perez, and Daniel Ricciardo, they were getting huge applause during qualifying. So I think the fans really wanted to see one of those guys win. But of course, Max Verstappen is just inevitable. Even when his team doesn't do their jobs perfectly, he still comes through and wins the race. So credit to him. But I mean, there was a whole lot of other crazy stuff that happened. Obviously, on turn 1, Carlos Sainz, who was on pole, got T-boned by George Russell, and he was out for the rest of the race, which was such a bummer for him. And then Charles Leclerc had to start all the way back, I think in 11th or 10th, because of a grid penalty. So he was able to work his way back up into 3rd, finished on the podium. Lewis Hamilton had like we said, had a great race. And then there was this huge collision between Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso. Luckily, both drivers were fine, but they were both given penalties. Lance Stroll was given a penalty for the maneuver that caused the collision, and then Fernando Alonso was given a penalty for driving with a unsecured mirror for the rest of the race, and race control felt that he should have gone in to get it fixed. So he got a 30-second penalty. So then everyone pretty much moved up a spot behind him. So yeah, it was a bit of a dramatic race, and like you said, there was a lot of overtaking and people Leclerc making a move on Perez, Verstappen on Hamilton, and then at the very end, Sebastian Vettel and Kevin Magnussen racing out the final lap against each other. It was, I mean, Sebastian Vettel's retiring at the end of the season, so this was probably his last time ever racing in Austin, and it was such a cool finish. Watching him go toe-to-toe and not giving up a spot, fighting until the very end. I thought it was really exciting to watch.
So while people that are just getting into this again, like me, know the name Lewis Hamilton and see how he dominated for, 8 years before Max Verstappen took the championship last year and has got it again this year for 2 years in a row. Talk about what Verstappen is doing, because he's already tied Michael Schumacher in 2004 and Sebastian Vettel in 2013. Each won 13 races. That's the record, of which Verstappen's going to break it. There's 3 more races, and to think he isn't going to win at least one of these 3 races, I think is ridiculous, unless he has just ungodly bad luck. So he's going to break this record. He's a 2-time world champ, and he's going to hold, let's just say it, he's going to hold the record for most wins in a season. I mean, how long are we looking at the domination of this guy in this sport?
He holds a whole number of Formula One records already. So right now he's 25. He holds the record for the youngest driver to start a race, the youngest driver to score points, the youngest driver to win a race, the youngest driver to score a podium finish, a whole bunch of more youngest drivers. And then he also has the record for most podium finishes in a season, which is last year he had 18 podium finishes. And then this year, like you said, 13 wins in a season, probably going to get at least 14. Wouldn't be surprised if he ended up finishing out with 16.
Yeah.
He's incredibly dominant, Mike. I think and again, he's super young. He's 25 years old, and he races for the team that has been the most consistent, who has had the best car, who has responded the best to the regulation changes this season. So yeah, I think everyone fully expects this to be a dominant streak, that Max Verstappen is just going to be the guy for the next while. And the only thing you can say negatively about Red Bull or Verstappen is all this other background noise happening now with the cost cap controversy. Red Bull apparently went over their spending limit last year in 2021 when Max Verstappen won his first championship in the final race of the season against Lewis Hamilton, which we don't need to rehash that controversy because in itself was one of the craziest things that's ever happened in a Formula One championship to begin with. But now there is this looming penalty over Red Bull. They can either admit that they went over the cost cap and get a reduced sentence or not admit to it and they'll get a bigger penalty, although no one knows what those penalties will be. Clearly, they're not going to impact what happened last year. They're not going to take the championship away from Verstappen, but it is a very, Mike, as fans of football, NFL football, there's a hard salary cap, right? And if you go over the salary cap, you get penalized, you lose picks maybe, you get fined a couple $1 million. There's a penalty for it, and I think NFL teams are pretty clear on what that could be. This has never happened before in Formula One because last year was the first year that they had a cost cap. So no one knows what the penalty is going to be, if there's going to be just a little slap on the wrist, but all the other teams are pissed about it. McLaren's team boss, Zach Brown, was not happy, did not mince words. He said that if cheating occurred, there needs to be a strict penalty for it. And Christian Horner, the Red Bull boss, did not like that. And they were at a press conference together over the weekend. And Lewis Hamilton, who unfortunately, probably still traumatized by what happened at the end of last year, said that, he's accepted it, but he thinks that if you're not going to enforce the cost cap, why even have one? Which is accurate. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. Probably nothing too exciting for people that don't like Red Bull, because I think Formula One doesn't want to make themselves look bad. But it is kind of an unfortunate shadow looming over the end of the season, for the other teams and for Verstappen, honestly, because he's earned both championships. He's driven really well. There really shouldn't be any question about whether or not he's the winner.
Should be more like the NBA, not the NFL. The NFL with a hard cap. The NBA has that luxury tax that if you start going over, you have to pay X amount, like Golden State pays some ungodly amount of money. Then again, these F1 teams, especially the top ones, have an ungodly amount of money. So do you not think, again, Red Bull, Verstappen won it. I think Sergio Perez was fourth. They won the Constructors' Cup as well, stopping the Mercedes 8-year streak of that. You don't think it'll affect this, right? That the Constructors' Cup?
I don't think so, but I'm not sure. Honestly, I don't think anyone really knows, A, the exact number they went over by. There's been mixed reporting on that. B, what that money was spent on. There's been claims that they went over on their catering budget, Mike, which sounds like something we would both do.
Without question, there shouldn't be a catering budget.
Exactly. Yeah. But, if you're making a budget and you're apparently their budget also had 75,000 line items, which I don't want to be the guy who audits that. That sounds miserable. If you're making a budget, though, and you're like, okay, we'll set aside $10 million for catering and $100 million for engineering, and then you spend $11 million on catering, you got to take the $1 million out somewhere else. You can't just be like, well, it was all the food we ordered. Clearly that money was spent somewhere else too.
That's what that lobster was.
Works.
Lobster cost us that extra $1 Shouldn't have done
exactly.
that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
And also, as an aside, we talk about how much NFL players eat and how much, money those cafeterias must cost. These teams are massive, and when they go on the road, I fully expect Ferrari's cost cap number to be at least 50% of it just spent on espresso or coffee beans or something, because all those Italian guys going on the road, they're spending money on coffee.
Yeah, that's very true. I don't know how much the drivers can eat. They're also small.
That's true.
So, yeah,
but the team,
I see some of the guys working the pits. They're not so small, so they're probably scarfing that up. Well, I'm glad you had a good time. I'm glad it was successful. Congrats. We already, Verstappen, we knew was going to obviously win the Drivers' Championship. Constructors' Cup goes to Red Bull as well. It's just 3 more races to go. But I'm glad you had a good time there. And I'm glad there'll be 3 next year, Miami, Austin, and Vegas. I'm really excited for that one to see how that goes. All right, let's jump into football. College football. We got to win, Jess. We got to win. I was at the game, Notre Dame, UNLV, and we got to win. We got a pretty convincing win. We weren't in much trouble in this game, so all the haters can tone it down for just a week anyway. I was actually some guy. I'm at the game and we're leaving, and some guy looks at me and says, "Well, it's good to know we can pad our wins with teams that are a little better than high school teams." I'm like, dude, number one, quit disparaging another team like that, and number two, just take the win. My God. I mean, what's sourpuss? Just shut the hell up. You got to win. Enjoy the win. We go to next week and we see what happens.
Do these fans not realize that every other college football program, especially Power 5 schools, schedule FCS teams every year? Notre Dame's one of the only teams that doesn't. Like, there are level, like, when you're making a football schedule, I don't even know why I'm engaging in this argument, actually. I quit.
They're never satisfied. It's like, my God, it's unreal. But you know what? One thing you don't ever expect, quite honestly, you put Syracuse on the schedule, you don't expect them to be a ranked team, right? I mean, they had their first loss, and it was a good game against Clemson, number 5 Clemson and Syracuse. They were both undefeated. That was a close game. It was Syracuse's first loss. They're still sitting at number 16. And Notre Dame goes there. And let me tell you, Notre Dame is going to have their hands full because they've been good at times and they've been really bad at times. And I don't know which team is going to show up, but they're going to need the good team to show up because Syracuse is playing some really good ball.
I think the way that you just described Notre Dame is exactly how I have felt watching them this season. Week to week, I don't exactly know what version of the team we're going to get. There have been great performances, there have been good performances, and then there have been very uninspiring performances, especially, Stanford at home and Marshall. But, I mean, just going back to this fan leaving the stadium, does he not realize that Notre Dame lost to one of these teams, a couple weeks ago? Like, you still get credit even if you win them and you're bad because you could still lose to them. That's why you play the games.
But I'm kind of with you. I kind of engage them, and then I'm like, why am I doing this? I did it on Twitter for a little bit, and I'm like, I finally ended up on Twitter saying this is stupid to continue on Twitter, so I'm done.
Yeah, I could not be, Mike, what you did for years and like taking callers and stuff like that. I couldn't do that. I would get too angry.
Yeah, it can be pretty, but again, that's why fan is short for fanatic, because these people, you just shake their head but just say, hey, thanks for listening. Thanks for following. Appreciate that. So, as far as college football, Bama beat Mississippi State. I mentioned Clemson over Syracuse. Oregon beat UCLA. That was another big matchup. Oklahoma State almost gave it up to Texas, and then TCU, but they won. And TCU over Kansas State. This week we have a couple of good matchups: Kentucky and Tennessee. Tennessee, is playing extremely, extremely well. They're sitting at number 3. As far as the rankings, it's Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee, Michigan, and Clemson as the top 5. Alabama just on the outside of that. It's Ohio State against Penn State, Michigan against Michigan State this week. That's a game Mike's calling for Learfield. So, it gets into, of the top-ranked teams you have in the top 7, 6 are undefeated. The top 5 are undefeated, as I just mentioned. Then Bama's 7-1. Then TCU is 7-0. So we'll see. But these teams, again, we're in the process of them all playing one another. So we know, that teams are going to kind of eat each other alive in these conferences. So I don't really know what to expect. For as far as our school, you have 3. We're sitting at 4-3. And the 2 games will be heavily favored and left are Navy and Boston College, which would put us at 6 wins. And make us bowl eligible.
Bowl game, baby.
And I know people are like, oh, that's where we are now, just hoping to be bowl eligible. I'm talking about the reality of the situation right now, people. Okay, this is where we are. And then can you get one of the other 3 games to get more? Because it's Syracuse, it's Clemson, and it's USC. So those are going to be 3 tough games that hopefully, we can win some of those. But I definitely think we can win those other 2 and become bowl eligible and get some extra practice time in, another bowl in. And like I said, I think, Jess, that's kind of where we are, and then see where Marcus is going to build this team going forward.
Yeah, and I think, look, everyone is disappointed that Notre Dame is, 3 losses in going up against Syracuse. I think this team was expected to be, 6-1 at this point. And I get that. No one that enjoys this, no Notre Dame fan is looking at this and saying yeah, this is fine. We're all happy and complacent with it. But at the same time, you can either just lay down and fold for the rest of the season and let these other teams roll over you and not, put up a fight, or you can try to make a bowl game and at least salvage what you can. I think the fan base would feel a lot worse losing the next, 5 games versus being 6-6 and playing in some, Sun Bowl or whatever it is. And it says a lot about the coaching staff and the players and the entire program to finish out a season versus just giving up and not caring anymore.
Right.
You have to make a point, if you're Marcus Freeman, to the fans, to your incoming recruits, to the veteran guys on your team who stuck around after their head coach left, who didn't enter the portal, who believed in you and what you were building at Notre Dame, that you're not going to give up just because you played a couple crappy games against Marshall and Stanford. Like you said, Notre Dame can still win some of these games. If they show up and play the best version of their game, I think they're a good team. They can win anything left on the table.
Yeah, and unfortunately they can lose it too, which
they can lose them all too. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But Clemson, Syracuse, they're Syracuse. They have had moments where they've not looked great. Clemson has had issues with their quarterback. DJ Uyunglele got benched against Syracuse. Luckily, they have the number 1 recruit in the country playing behind him in Cade Klubnik. So not too bad if you're a Clemson fan. But there have been times that they have looked, they've struggled. And then, Navy and Boston College, you don't want to lose either of those games. Those would be just a dagger to the heart.
Yeah.
But, and then USC, it's a rival, it's on the road. It's going to be a tough game no matter what. But you can still be competitive and give them the other team fits, if not win. So I don't know. I don't know the point in not being optimistic about it. And also being realistic at the same time.
Optimistic and realistic are 2 good words to use. Listen, Notre Dame's not going to be near the top this year. And we're, November 5th, we're going to see Tennessee against Georgia. So, that's an excellent matchup, and I think for the Heisman now, you look at Hendon Hooker, the kid from Tennessee. 18 touchdowns, 1 interception, completing almost 69% of his passes. He's in there with C.J. Stroud from Ohio State and Bryce Young from Alabama. So we're just going to have to, continue to wait. Ohio State-Michigan game, I don't see either one getting knocked off before that game happens at the end of the year. So then we get into conference championships and see where this goes, again, because it's just a 4-team playoff as they try and figure out maybe to extend the playoffs by next year. Where we wouldn't be having this discussion then at the top more than we would at the mid or the bottom once they expand the playoffs. So we will see more good games, as we mentioned, this week. So it's getting to that time of the season. And as far as the NFL, it's always that time of the season, whether it's week 1 or not. So I always have to start off by asking you, what you think of your team, Pittsburgh, and what you think of your guy, Kenny Pickett, who, oh my God, is looking like a rookie quarterback. So we shouldn't really be shocked, right?
No, not at all. And it was the second start on the road in Miami against a Miami team that really Miami came out guns a-blazing, Mike. Tua was back, his first game back since having the concussion against the Bengals, and he looked really good in the first couple drives. And then the Steelers were able to control the Dolphins' offense, which I was impressed by. They made some good adjustments. They were able to not get this. After I watched the first drive, Mike, I thought it was going to be like a 45-7 blowout by the Dolphins, and it wasn't. It ended up being 16-10. Second half, nothing happened. But Kenny Pickett did throw 2 interceptions, which was a bummer because he was moving the ball pretty well and just made some bad choices, and those are things that you kind of expect, rookies to make. Only a few rookie quarterbacks have had, those things not happen to them. And,
right.
and it's why there's so much pressure now to play well when you're a rookie. I don't know. I mean, the season's not going great. I don't expect them to make the playoffs. I do want them to win close games, but you don't win close games when you're not a very good team. And there's just been times that the Steelers have not played very well. So it is what it is. But there were a number of teams that also kind of played pretty crappy on Sunday, including Tampa Bay. I did not expect to see Tampa Bay get, I guess, could you call it a blown out by the Panthers?
Oh, yeah. They got blown out by the Panthers. Yes.
Ugh.
I mean, listen, the two teams that we keep, and I still have to cover them a couple of more times unless they get flexed out at the end of the year, the Green Bay Packers. You know, the talk of Tampa Bay and Green Bay, and I started to say this a couple of weeks ago, I don't think they're digging themselves out of this. You just don't see where it's coming from. At some point, this is your team, right? I mean, this is what you have. You know, a lot of times the only thing that can get worse is you get worse because of injuries. Now, you do have a trade deadline coming up, and you saw the move San Francisco made by trading for Christian McCaffrey. Carolina sold off Robbie Anderson to Arizona and Christian McCaffrey, their by far best player, to San Francisco, and still beat Tampa Bay. I mean, that just blows my mind. That's what I mean. You know, fans sit there and say, oh, God, I hope my team loses, you know, so we get a better draft spot. You know, and I always say, man, don't expect that out of the players. The players, you're in, and oh, by the way, you know, Carolina is at 2-5 is one game out of first place. That division stinks. The NFC South stinks to high heaven. But even if they're out of it, players play hard because now they're playing for self-preservation. As I've talked about, they're playing for whoever the new coach is going to be, or maybe they're playing for another team out there that they're going to have to end up on. So you got to be careful of those teams. They will sneak up and bite you in the ass. But as far as Tampa Bay and Green Bay, I don't know where it's coming from. I mean, I don't know where it's going to get better. Green Bay had 4 drops Sunday, 10 drops in the last 2 weeks. Now, maybe that can get better. The guys quit dropping the damn ball. I've said when I cover them, they need to be more of a running team and then work the pass in. But it's hard to say that when you have Aaron Rodgers. It's hard to say that when you have Tom Brady, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. But that's what's going to help these guys. So we'll see if they do it. But as far as in it for what their goals are, when you're Brady and when you're Rodgers, the goal is the Super Bowl. Tampa Bay may win that division out of suck because that whole division stinks. Green Bay's going to have to be careful. They're already 3 behind Minnesota, but you're going to have to sit there and look at a wild card spot as they fall behind them. But I don't think either one of those teams is going to do anything. Green Bay may not even make the playoffs. The team, to me, Jess, that's been so surprising, and they just keep going, and he just keeps going, is Seattle and Geno Smith. I mean, they're sitting there and in the lead in the NFC West now. That blows my mind.
Same here. I mean, do you give credit more to Pete Carroll in that situation for having like the coaching chops to be able to get more out of this team than what you see on paper? Or do you give credit to Geno Smith for finally getting a chance to actually play and prove himself?
You know, I think like anything else, it's a little bit of both. You know, you got to give credit either because I certainly did. Oh, Seattle's rebuilding. They got nothing going on. Their future quarterback isn't on the roster. Geno Smith is completing almost 74% of his passes, 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's rating right at the top of the league in what he's doing. So you have to give him a ton of credit because I can't think of anybody who expected that. Maybe to be decent, but to be this good and what he's doing. Because we thought, you know, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf were going to be just guys running down the field with their hands up going, shit, nobody can get us the ball. And Geno Smith is getting them the ball. And Kenneth Walker is proven to be a monster at running back as well. So this is a team, again, in a division, you know, we'll see. I mean, I think like San Francisco coming out of this division over the Rams. You know, getting Christian McCaffrey was absolutely monstrous, I think, of how much he can help them. But I have to believe Seattle's the biggest surprise team in the league. I guess, who's the biggest surprise? Giants, Jets, Seattle, in your mind?
Man, I'm going to have to go with the Giants. I mean, just because I live with a Giants fan who is like the saddest boy in the world most of the football season. I can't believe that his team's doing better than mine, but I'm shocked by them. I think, before we move on, Seattle right now plus 500 to win the NFC West. Right. Are you taking those odds? Maybe.
Man, I mean, I sit there and start to look a little bit. You take 3 wild cards of where they are in relation to the others. They got a good shot. I almost would throw a little bit on that one.
Yeah.
The way they're playing.
The Jets right now odds are plus 135 to make the playoffs. So I don't know if I buy Jets stock yet. But yeah, I mean the Giants, maybe in hindsight, some of those big wins they've had have been against crappier teams now that you look at like that Packers result in London. But, you still have to win those games. So, I don't know. I like the Giants. I think they're fun. I think Daniel Jones is playing really well with his legs. And Saquon Barkley is incredible. I don't know what else you can say about them. The one thing I wanted to talk about with you, Mike, before we move off of the dreaded NFC South is the Mike Evans referee autograph saga. Have you been following this whole story and the update
a bit.
From Tuesday?
I have been following it a bit, yes.
Okay, so there's a video where Mike Evans is walking into the tunnel and a referee looks to be like handing him a piece of paper, and then Mike Evans writes something on it and he takes it back and smiles and like says thank you. And so this, I think a reporter tweeted it out and said, I didn't know that the refs you could ask players to sign autographs or something like that. So big controversy already because it did kind of look like he was signing an autograph for him. Now, I saw that video and I was like, there's no way. There's no way that this is an autograph signing because it's on just a regular note card. What value does that have? It's not like he was signing a jersey or a helmet or a ticket or something that would actually have maybe like a little bit of value, a ball even. But then the news came out that apparently, according to Tim Pelissero, the ref was asking Mike Evans for his number to give him set up with a guy giving golf lessons or something like that. Are you buying this story?
I can't for the life of me figure out why on, like you said, a piece of paper or index card that they're asking for an autograph. Right? That one, it does seem odd to me, because it is a no-no. By the way, I mean you're not allowed, obviously, to do that. In all honesty, I think I would believe the golf thing more than the autograph. That it was his phone number about golf. Because I can't feel like you're right. It would be like I would get a helmet or I'd get a jersey or I'd get something. Yeah. that would look better in my man cave or whatever I was going to do with it, then it's like a 10-year-old kid handing a piece of paper to a player. So I'm going to say I think I believe, and we'll find out. We'll always find out that it turns out it was about golf, and obviously the referee can't really tweet it out or show it because then he's tweeting out Mike Evans' phone number.
Mike Evans' number.
To everybody. Well, what do you think?
Apparently, I totally buy this. This sounds like something a referee would do. I mean, all these guys have like golf instructors and they all, have mutual friends that play golf with one another. So I think it makes way more sense than the autograph signing. But I think the NFL said that the line judge has been reminded of the importance of avoiding even the appearance of impropriety when interacting with players, coaches, and club staff on game day. And then from Tom Pelissero, in other words, bad luck, no discipline.
Yeah, exactly.
Bad luck, I'm sorry. It is a bad luck, but he's not going to get in trouble.
Yeah, make sure you're a little farther in the concourse maybe or in the locker room so nobody nobody can get video and see that. Real quick to end this on the football. Do you realize right now who the NFC starting quarterbacks for the Pro Bowl would be?
I mean, Geno Smith,
Kirk Cousins, Jalen Hurts.
All right.
That would be your in a conference that has Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady in it, and Tom Brady coming off throwing for the most yards last year.
That is crazy. I mean, I don't know about you. I don't think Tom Brady himself has been the problem. He doesn't look that bad. I mean, at least sometimes I don't know. I don't know how to talk about Tom Brady, Mike. Has he been the problem to you? Have you noticed a drop off in his?
He's been part of the problem without question. Some of his throws have been horrific.
Yeah.
I mean, they have been bad. So yeah, he's part of the problem.
All right.
But again, when you're doing this poorly, you can't point to one thing.
That's
this
true.
defense had been playing great, and then they get gashed occasionally. They would have running attempts, but not a great running game.
They haven't been able to get a run game going.
No.
I mean, he did throw for almost 300 yards against the Panthers, I guess, but they only rushed for, I want to say, like 50 or something like that.
Yeah, they're not running the ball. Like early on, Leonard Fournette was getting attempts, but he was averaging like under 3 yards. I mean, it wasn't going well. Brady has thrown for 290, 243, 351, 385, 271, 190, and 212. As I said, 8 touchdowns and 1 interception. He doesn't turn the ball over. We'll give him that. He definitely has been hit. He's been sacked 10 times. Normally it's not a ton because he gets rid of the ball pretty quickly. He's not outrunning anybody. But, he's absolutely been part of the problem with a lot of other things. So, like I said, anybody who tries to just pick one thing, it's difficult to do. Quickly on the other side, I've covered him this year, and I've been screaming about it, is the way that Justin Fields has been used. Finally, they're running him. Finally. I don't know why it took so long. I think he had 14 designed runs, in the Monday Nighter in their win that they had. And, oh my God. Justin Fields looks good running the ball. No shit. Where was this? So I don't know if it turns their season around to do anything, but I think, you're going to start to see a template for what you need to do with him. Their old line needs work. They need more heavy hitters on offense. But I think Justin Fields, to the other side of it, is going to be a big part of the solution for the Bears if they kind of let him play his way. It's kind of like with Josh Allen, who ran his first year, and then the second year they tried to say, well, we don't want him to run as much and get hurt, and it wasn't as effective. You got to let him be him. You got to let Josh run and do his thing. You got to let Justin Fields run, man. You got to let him be the threat that he is. So I did like that out of them. But I think we're Tampa Bay and Green Bay is done. And I had said at the beginning of this year, I think this is Tom Brady's last year. And you heard him at one of his last pressers. I have no plans to retire. I mean, my God, how far and how long could he go?
Good Lord. Yeah. Well, so back to Justin Fields for a second. That Monday night game with Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones. Quarterback controversy. I would love to see Bailey Zappi get a chance to play a few games for the Patriots. He's got, his statistics at Western Kentucky were insane. He threw like 62 touchdowns, over 5,700 yards, I think, in his senior year, Conference USA champion. But yeah, Justin Fields is, he's a really good player. He's a really smart player.
Yeah.
He is fast. He has a huge arm, but the Bears they have a pretty bad offensive line. And the Bears offensively, I know they have a new coaching staff and a new GM, but for years, this has kind of been like a pretty uninspiring offense to watch. So I hope that they start getting it now because they have a really, really good player, in their quarterback, and wasting his talents by making him, throw in the pocket behind this terrible line is just stupid. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and quite honestly, he struggled a bit throwing the ball, in those cases. So you got to definitely mix it up with the boots, with the waggles, with the design run. So it was good to see. It's a guy they definitely can build around. So we will see. So last question from me. When you went to Austin and you were going to be there for a little bit, did you take any baked goods with you?
I did not, but Mike, I ate a lot of tacos this weekend.
Did you really?
A lot of tacos. Austin is known for all these taco places, and I have to say one thing I've been to Austin twice now, and people, when they find out you're going to Austin, they love to tell you which taco place to go to, and they are aggressive about it. If you go to the wrong taco place, people are mean to you. They're like, why did you go there?
This is Philly and cheesesteaks, same way. They tell you where to go. It's the exact same thing. So did you heed what people were saying?
Look, I'm not going to say where I went because I don't want people to get all up in my business and tell me that was, you should have gone to Taco Deli. Oh, you should have gone to Veracruz. Oh, you should have gone to Torchy's. I'm not doing that right now. I will say I ordered $30 worth of tacos, ate it on my hotel bed. I had a king-size bed, ate it on my bed while I watched the end of, what was the Saturday night game? I can't even remember. College football game. Watched football, ate my tacos, had a huge thing of salsa. It was delicious, Mike. Highly recommend eating tacos on your bed in Austin.
Can I just say, you bringing that up, and both of us travel a bit. I've been traveling every weekend. There is nothing like eating your food on your bed.
Yeah.
I mean, and
it's
even
great.
a lot of times I'll take 2 double beds. That way, one is my eating bed, and one is my sleeping bed, because there is the side of being messy on your bed and then having to sleep in it. But I would usually put a towel over me, and I like anything I eat or drink when I'm done, I throw it on the floor, and then when I'm gonna leave, I pick everything up and throw it away. But for the time I'm there, the time I walk in the door, everything gets thrown on the floor next to the bed or on the floor somewhere else until I clean it all up before I leave. But there is nothing like bringing in your food, sitting at the proper height so you don't choke while you eat your food, putting that towel on my chest and just eating and drinking on my bed. And
Yes.
if I'm fortunate enough to have 2 double beds, then one's an eating bed and one's a sleeping bed. It is
That's
glorious.
amazing.
Yeah.
I agree. I love being a huge slob when I'm on a work trip and
Yeah,
just letting tortilla crumbs
Yes.
and chips and salsa like all over my face. It doesn't matter. It's all over the bed. I'm wiping my hands on the sheets. I'm like, these are
Yes.
gonna get washed anyways. It's one of life's simple pleasures, Mike.
It really is. It really is, and I'm very, very happy that you took advantage of it. Good for you, and good luck with your move as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, we'll see you next week.